It's really a pleasure to have this conversation with you this evening. I hope you're doing very well out there in New York, and really happy to have your views on a variety of subjects that I've been really waiting to discuss with you, Barry. Welcome to Media for Growth conversation.
It's my pleasure, Rajiv. It's always good to see you. Unfortunately, in the past 18 months, I've only seen you via Zoom as opposed to before, but I look forward in the not too distant future to see you in person in Bombay, in Mumbai, in New York, wherever.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely looking forward to that as well, Barry. So I think we will straight away get into our conversation and talking about the world around us. And the last 12 months have been quite tumultuous, fast, and it's been very fast changing as well. So if we were to speak about DOOH in particular, what is the new future that you see for DOOH in the backdrop of this new normal that we are all talking about?
Yeah, it's we're actually very hopeful and looking forward to an exciting period as much of the world is emerging from this awful disease. Certainly some regions are coming out earlier than others. Thankfully, in the US, we are seeing a lot of restrictions being lowered, and there's been a lot of activity. I myself went to a couple of advertising events recently. Actually, I went to a Cannes Lions event, not on the Côte d'Azur, but on the Hudson River of New York City, but it was still nice nonetheless. And we are getting out, and that is making for advertising to come out, and of course, digital out of home. And we're very excited. Most of the big holding companies are predicting double-digit increases for out of home this year around the world in most countries. And look, I think as we've seen, COVID has accelerated so many things in business and activities and strategies and tactics that were going to happen anyway.
Fantastic. I think it's a very, very strong and positive statement. That would be a great source of encouragement for the industry as a whole.
You're hearing me be very positive now. I wasn't that positive about 18 months ago, my friend.
Fantastic, Barry. Barry, on that positive note, I would also like to know whether, do you see greater collaboration between DOOH firms and entities across geographical boundaries? I would like you to state this in the context of your own activities at DPAA, where you bring the different global players and operators together on a common platform.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of collaboration. In fact, a lot of our members around the world have thanked us for bringing the community together during this challenging time. Straight away, we had a series of leadership meetings where all of our CEOs and CMOs got together and compared notes of how we were going to deal with this crisis. And then we've had a series of meetings of coming out of the crisis. So the good news is, as we promote the digitization of out of home, is that digital crosses borders, digital practices, digital strategies, digital technologies. So that has enabled us to be the glue for our global community to join together and really help repair our industry from early on. And now we've moved very excitedly into growth area. What I would say, I think, is really important, Rajiv, about the past period is that as many businesses and elements that were going to happen have accelerated during COVID, what has actually happened quite nicely in our area is programmatic. And if so, I'd like to speak a little bit about digital out-of-home programmatic, if that makes sense for you.
Surely, absolutely, Barry.
Good. So what we've seen is that programmatic has really positioned ourselves as a great media, flexible and agile around the world. During COVID, especially at the beginning, programmatic and digital campaigns were easy to pause where need be. We were easy to push them to where audiences were. It was easy to move around schedules without a lot of human contact and contract. So the agility and the flexibility of programmatic digital out of home has really showcased a superpower of digital out of home around the world, so much so in this period of COVID where we needed to pause schedules where there were not audiences. We needed to move them to where audiences were, whether near supermarkets or gas stations or doctors' facilities. So that's been one of the good outcomes of this challenging period.
Interesting, very interesting, Barry. In fact, as you mentioned, programmatic, I thought I would remold the question that I was actually about to ask you. My question was that for DOOH to grow further, would we want to see greater consolidation of media ownership? But at the same time, now that you have mentioned programmatic and with a number of SSPs and DSPs, would that consolidation be necessary when there are platforms like these?
Well, we at DPAA have served to bring thinking, strategies, tactics, and scale together. So that's one thing. I think we will see some mergers and acquisitions in the space. Yet, we have a wonderful array of homegrown SSPs and DSPs in our industry. And also during COVID, the pipes were getting connected more thoroughly. So once again, that has happened, which is great. And then there's an array of other programmatic entities that are now connecting to our homegrown entities, whether it be Verizon Media, who is a great DPAA board member, whether it be the Trade Desk, Zaxxas is a member. So what we're seeing is the programmatic ecosystem is now hooking to our ecosystems, and throughout digital out of home around the world, many of all of our members are working with them and working with our media owners all over the world.
Fantastic, Barry. Well, talking about digital out of home growth, different markets are at different stages of development. And if I were to look at an emerging market like India, which has been dominated by the classic media, where operators are now beginning to look at the scope of digital out of home media. If we were to accelerate the growth of digital out of media, would that be at the expense of classic media, or do you see a perfect coexistence between the two formats and two lines of business?
What I first like to say is, and we are the promoters and the builders and the connectors of the digital out of home advertising world to each other and to the advertising community, brands and advertisers. What we mean by that, Rajiv, is overarching digitization. So we encourage all of our members to have digital best practices, to have digital data, to utilize digital strategies and tactics in communication, in sales, in presentation, in research. And digital screens are, yes, part of that. But like every other business that has been supercharged by digitization, be it finance, education, Wall Street, the city in London, we are encouraging all digitization strategies, tactics, and yes, digital screens, and yes, video screens. So even for the more classic or static, definitely can coexist, but we encourage the business practices to go more digital, and also, of course, eventually have the screens go more digital. We have seen in many markets where media owners have gone digital that the revenue has increased by multiples. Of course, the targeting is much more successful, which drives higher cost per thousands and more value for the media owners and the advertisers.
Wonderful. That's very interesting. So, Barry, what you are suggesting is that all of the classic media operators and owners should actually look at the entire digital ecosystem and adopt the best practices and technologies to drive those businesses as well, right? It's not just about replacement of the classic media formats with digital screens, right?
Yes, and look, that may be an evolution, and we do encourage that because there is no brand or consumer that wakes up in the morning and doesn't say, I love video. I love to look at video screens. It's human nature, it's brand nature. But at the same time, it is imperative that no matter what the actual physical board may look like, is that we're no longer using fax machines, and we're using platforms, and we're using software, and we're using hardware, and we're using more of digitalization and APIs than old-time contracts and manual labor, so to speak. And that's what we promote around the world.
Interesting. I'll move on to another aspect. Where if you're talking about emerging markets or markets that are evolving, Barry, especially in markets which have dominance of classic media format, historically they have been all very supply driven. Whereas when we look at digital out of home media, we would expect that it should be demand led. One very interesting aspect that you've focused upon, and I think you're doing that with great success, is about having created the brand council, and you are holding very interesting events engaging the brand marketers and experts. Now, Barry, tell me if the engagement of brands is helping to actually evangelize the use of digital out of home in myriad ways. And let me have your experience with this aspect.
Great question, and very timely question, Rajiv, because this week we just had our meeting with our DPAA CEO Brand Council and the DPAA Board of Directors, and we had leading brands that control media and marketing all over the world that gave us great guidance and great advice. And look, I've always been a media guy. I've always been a sales and marketing executive, and I am keenly focused on the customer. Without understanding and embracing the customer needs, we cannot deliver value. So it has been my role from day one at DPAA, and I think it's part of the reason we've grown so much, that we are distinctly focused on customer needs. In fact, we had one very senior member this week who was also very interestingly talking about how advertising should no longer be just interruptive, but should be giving value to their customer, the consumer. And it's the same kind of idea. In fact, when you talk about so much of advertising that is interruptive, whether it's on television, whether it's on radio, whether it's pop-ups on the web or on phone apps, our medium is not interruptive. It actually delivers value because there's content, because there's messaging. It's also in public. It's very trustworthy. There's so many dynamic superpowers of digital out-of-home advertising because it's focused on the customer, be it the person in the street, governments. Look at all the great information. We created many campaigns around the world that aired in 12 languages and 18 countries that talked about, at the beginning of COVID, of taking best practices for safety and health. We've seen this all over the world. So, we're focused on the customer, we're focused on the person in the street, and we're very keenly focused on the brands because that's our partners in growing this business together.
Marvelous. Barry, in your interaction with the brand heads and brand marketers, are you hearing the language that digital out-of-home media should be planned along with digital media?
Yes. So, we're in a stage now where it is that evolutionary stage. There's lots of silos at ad agencies. There are always, when you're doing new elements, it's difficult to build it because of heritage systems and legacy systems in place. But that is changing. And once again, it takes education, which DPAA does, with the CEOs of agencies, with the heads of brands, bringing in our own members to do the great education process that is so needed. And look, and I've done this my whole career. I helped build cable television around the world. We helped educate advertisers and brands to digital, to mobile. And it is now imperative for all of us to come together, and that's what we do. We come together as a global DPAA organization to educate and inform, and as you know, and you've been to our summits, to also do that by entertaining and delighting and surprising, which, by the way, we're hoping that you, Rajiv, and everybody from our friends in India and all over can come October 12th to the DPAA Global Summit. New York City at Pier 60 and Chelsea Piers on the Hudson River. It should be an amazing coming together, and hopefully everybody will be able to come and be healthy as it all opens up by then.
Absolutely, Barry. I'm really looking forward to being there for the event. Before I get to the summit, I have one other question that I want to ask you about, is that I attended the Brand Council related event that you all hosted yesterday. And what I also noticed were that there were a good number of women speakers. There is also an initiative that DPAA has taken to actually encourage greater roles for women in the DOOH business. Tell us something about what the initiatives mean for you and for the organization.
Yes, women leadership, and I should say diversity overarching is imperative to our global industry. With more diversity comes more innovation, comes more thought, comes more creativity. And it is proven that with more leaders at the helm and with more diversity in our organizations and at the helm, that businesses succeed faster, better, quicker. And that is such an imperative of mine. So we formed years ago, we do Women Empowerment and Digital Out of Home. And Women Empowerment and Digital Out of Home seeks to raise the level of personal and professional development of our women leaders around the world. We've had a series for the past 4 years now of best practices, of subject matter experts, with coursework, with webinars, with seminars, and actually even cocktails and get-togethers in different places around the world where our women leaders get together and step up their game, which is so important for everybody's game. And then we also formed the DEI DPAA board of advisors, where we have CEOs from ad agencies, we have leaders from around the world of diverse nature that once again have come together and built programs where we have helped support the diversity interests of our business. And it's just so incredible and important that we do that. You know, Mark Pritchard at Procter & Gamble, the CMO, always talks about how companies should be not only a force for growth, but a force for good. And that's what DPAA is doing around the world, and our members are also doing.
Fantastic, really game-changing, I would say, Barry. Now coming to the summit that you have planned, is there something that new that you're planning at the summit, considering how the world had been, how businesses are changing around the world? Tell us a little bit about what we can expect at the Video Everywhere Summit.
Yes, so actually, if I could pause for a moment before we get to the summit on Monday, and I think you'll be airing this later on Monday, India time, or 11 o'clock a.m. New York time, we'll be having a huge event all about privacy and data. And I think that may be important for your audiences. So we're having a big event, and we just published a white paper. What's happening, as you know, is that the IDFAs are going away from Apple, iOS. Google is displacing their cookies and mitigating the cookies. They've actually now pushed it back a little bit. The question is, what does this mean for digital out-of-home advertising? The good news is not much, and this is important. Unlike all of the mobile technologies and the web and online data and targeting, we are not as reliant upon it. And what we're seeing now is a shifting from advertisers and agencies to go back to brand fundamentals, to foundational parts of advertising that we are just so good at. Brand safety, not skipping ads, not having the ability to skip ads. So we published this whole white paper, and on Monday evening, your time, we'll be holding a big event with Kochava, our partner, about what the cookie and the IDFA changes mean to the digital out-of-home world, brands and advertisers. And we're actually very excited because it won't affect us, and it actually highlights the foundational aspects, the importance of context that we deliver so well in the ad world. But now I'll get back to your summit question. But before I do that, out of respect and my love for you and all my friends in India, we want to replace this flag for just a moment, if you'll allow me.
Wow.
I've had this planned all along, Reggie.
All right.
But now we can do the proper interview the way it's supposed to be done.
Wonderful. That's amazing, Barry. That's really amazing. It really brought forth the true India spirit.
I've been to Bombay a couple of times, and the people are amazing and wonderful, and just so so good and heartful and learned, and gee, I really miss it. I'm hoping that I can get back there soon and see
Absolutely.
you
Look
and
forward to
all the
that.
rest of my friends. Absolutely. So back to the summit, as you asked, and look, we're going to have it October 12th in New York. It's going to be a big event where our plan is to have, since we've all seen so many talking heads, as you're seeing two talking heads here, our plan is to have less talking heads and more hugging and more entertainment and cocktails. But there'll also be, as there is every year at the DPAA event, a tremendous amount of learning from the real global leaders in brands and advertising. We're going to have our global membership there, of course. And once again, as an example, last year we had the global head of MasterCard, Rajiv Raghunath, who's the head of marketing there and the head of health there. We had the CEO of LVMH last year. We had newscasters, newsmakers, thought leaders, and once again, an array of delightful, surprising, and delighting elements.
Wow, sounds very exciting. I'm just waiting to be there for the summit. And I'm sure there will be many others from India who will be very keen to be there.
Yes. We have a lot of members in India, and we're just hoping the world all comes together as it should.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Barry, my final question. You have often expressed your interest to have a much more deeper engagement in India. Is it too early to look in that direction?
We have all the groundwork laid. We have everything in place, and we're just waiting for shots in arms and double vaxes, and then we're all set to go.
Fantastic. Really looking forward to DPA playing a much bigger role as the Indian DOOH story starts to grow bigger and bigger. Thank you very much, Barry. It has been such a pleasure having this conversation. And as I said, every time it is a great delight for me to talk to you. I look forward to many more opportunities, and I look forward to being there at the Video Everywhere Summit, as well as have you over to India for our events. Thank you so much, Barry.
The same here, Rajiv. It is distinctly my pleasure, and I can't wait till I see you in person. I've got a big hug for you, and all the best to you and your family and friends, my friend.